Are the kids all right? I mean, that is the question, isn't it?
It really is. It's everywhere.
It feels like it's been hanging in the air for a decade now. You hear it whispered at dinner parties, you see it shouted in op-eds, and if you're a parent, you probably feel it in the pit of your stomach every time you hand over an iPad just to get 5 minutes apiece.
Oh, absolutely. The digital pacifier.
Right. But today, we aren't just asking the question rhetorically. We are doing a deep dive into a source that gives a very direct, data-driven, and frankly terrifying answer. And that answer is no. They are absolutely not all right.
It's a stark opening, I admit, but it's the right way to frame it because we aren't dealing with vague, kids these days anxieties here.
No old man yells at cloud energy today.
Exactly. We're looking at a very specific, rigorous argument that suggests something fundamental has broken in the way human beings develop.
And to guide us through this, we're looking at The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And for those who don't know, Haidt isn't just some pundit making a guess. He's a social psychologist at NYU. He's been studying moral psychology for decades.
Right. He wrote The Coddling of the American Mind.
Yeah. So when he rings the alarm bell, you kind of have to pay attention. He deals in data, not vibes.
He really does. And the central thesis of this book, the core idea we need to unpack today, is what he calls the Great Rewiring.
The Great Rewiring. It sounds like science fiction.
It does, but it's social history.
And our mission today is to figure out what that actually means. We need to understand what changed in the environment of childhood, why it's messing with our heads, literally, biologically, and crucially, what the source says we can actually do about it.
Because there are solutions. It's not all doom and gloom.
Right. But before we get into the weeds of the data, I want you, the listener, to do a little mental time travel with us.
Oh, this is a great exercise.
Think back to your own childhood. Let's say you're 10 years old. It's a Tuesday afternoon. School is out. What are you doing? Who are you with? And most importantly, are there any adults watching you?
Keep that image in your head.
That feeling of freedom or boredom or maybe even a little bit of danger, because that is the baseline we need to compare against what we see today.
That contrast is the absolute heart of the matter.
Yeah.
Because Haidt's argument isn't just that, screens are bad. It's much deeper. It's that we have fundamentally swapped one entire type of childhood for another.
And to understand the scale of this swap, we have to look at the timeline. Haidt pins this entire crisis to a very specific turning point, the data spike.
Yes, the hockey stick graph.
This was the part of the book that really made me sit up straight. Because usually when you look at sociological trends, things like crime rates or divorce rates or even just general happiness, they move like ocean liners.
They turn so slowly, over decades.
Exactly. Cultural changes are usually gradual curves, but that's not what Haidt found here.
Not at all. When he plots the mental health data for adolescents, it's just bobbing along, relatively stable for years. And then you hit the year 2010, and it is like the floor drops out.
Just a sudden vertical spike.
Upward trends in anxiety, depression, and self-harm that look like a cliff face.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we aren't talking about statistical noise here, right? Like a 5% bump.
No, we are talking about increases of 100% to 150% in things like emergency room visits for self-harm among teenage girls in the U.S.
That is staggering.
And the terrifying part, it's not just the U.S. Haidt layers the charts for the UK, Canada, Australia, and the Nordic countries right on top of each other.
We're all move in lockstep.
Almost identical trajectories,
Okay.
all flat and then all spiking exactly around 2010.
Which suggests this isn't about American politics
No.
or the U.S. economy or school shootings specifically. It's something global, and it hit every developed nation at the exact same moment.
Everywhere, all at once.
Okay, so the detective in me has to ask, what happened in 2010? What was the asteroid that hit the planet?
Well, it wasn't an asteroid. It was the front-facing camera.
The iPhone 4.
Precisely.
Yeah.
2010 to 2012 is this crucial window. It's where the smartphone moved from being a luxury business tool like the BlackBerry, which adults use for emails, to being a mass-market appendage for teenagers.
Because it got cheaper and it got social.
Right. It's when the iPhone 4 came out with a selfie camera. It's when Instagram launched. It's the exact moment the internet moved from a desktop computer, something you had to actually sit down and intentionally visit, to something that was in your pocket, interrupting you 24/7.
It really is that synchronization that's spooky. But I have to play devil's advocate here because I know a lot of listeners are probably thinking this exact thing.
Bring it on.
We hear the snowflake generation argument a lot. Is it possible that kids aren't actually doing worse? They're just talking about it more? Like, we have less stigma around mental health now. Maybe we're just counting the cases better.
That is the most common counter-argument out there. And frankly, it's the most dangerous one because it allows us to just dismiss the problem entirely.
Right, lets us off the hook.
Exactly. But Haidt tackles this head-on. He agrees that self-reports can be fuzzy. If you ask a kid today, are you anxious? The definition of anxious might have changed.
Anxious might just mean nervous about a math test now, instead of clinical disorder.
Right. But that is exactly why Haidt focuses on hard markers. You cannot fake a hospital admission for self-harm. You cannot fake suicide statistics.
Because there's a physical record.
Yes. When you look at those hard medical events where a body is physically damaged and admitted to an emergency room, the spike is just as dramatic. So no, this isn't just kids being more open about their feelings. This is a real, tangible deterioration in cognitive and emotional health.
That is incredibly chilling. And there was another piece of data that really solidified this for me. The control group.
Oh, this is fascinating. I love this part of the argument.
Haidt points out that if this were about, say, the 2008 financial crisis,
Oh, climate change doom.
right, or political polarization, you would expect everyone to be more anxious. You'd see the spike in 30-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 70-year-olds, because everyone lives in the same economy. Everyone lives on the same warming planet.
But you don't see the spike in those older groups.
You don't.
The mental health of millennials and Gen Xers stayed relatively flat during that same 2010 period. This crisis specifically targeted the generation that went through puberty with a smartphone in their hand.
Yeah.
It hit Gen Z.
So we have the when, 2010, we have the what, the smartphone and social media. But let's get into the how. This is where we really hit the core concept of the book, the great rewiring.
Yes.
Haidt argues we've moved from a play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood.
And I want to be really clear here. This isn't just about screen time. It's not just counting minutes on a device. It's about opportunity cost. It's about what the phone pushes out of a child's life.
Let's unpack the play-based side first, because I think we tend to romanticize the past a bit. You know, oh, we drank from the garden hose and we turned out fine.
Right, the nostalgia trap.
But Haidt is arguing there's an actual biological evolutionary function to that kind of childhood, isn't there?
Absolutely. It is evolutionary training. Think about young mammals, puppies, kittens, bear cubs. What do?
They wrestle.
They wrestle, they play fight, they explore.
They bite each other.
They do. And that is crucial. When kids play unsupervised, and the emphasis is heavily on unsupervised, they're running a simulation of the real world.
They have to figure it out themselves.
Yes. They have to negotiate rules. You're out. No, I'm not. They have to manage risk. Climbing that tree might actually hurt. They have to handle social rejection if they act like a jerk on the playground.
And because there's no adult hovering there to act as a judge or a police officer, they are forced to solve it themselves.
Precisely. And that process builds what Haidt, borrowing from the thinker Nassim Taleb, calls anti-fragility.
I love this concept, anti-fragility. It's very different from just being resilient, right?
It is. Resilience means you withstand a shock and you just stay the exact same. You bounce back.
Like a rubber band.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anti-fragility means you actually need shocks to get stronger. Like your immune system needs germs to learn how to fight off sickness.
Or like how astronauts lose bone density in space because bones need the stress of gravity to stay strong.
That's a perfect analogy. Haidt argues that children's psyches are inherently anti-fragile. They need small doses of fear, failure, and exclusion to build the psychological immune system required to handle the adult world.
And this brings us to the villain of the story. Or maybe the accomplice. Safetyism.
Yes, the great paradox of modern parenting.
It's almost like we've completely inverted the natural order of things. In the physical world, which statistically has actually never been safer, we act like we're in an active war zone.
We track them with AirTags. We don't let them walk 3 blocks to the bus stop.
We sanitize every playground so no one can possibly break a wrist or scrape a knee.
We prioritize safety above all other values, even above development. We have removed the germs of risk from the physical world.
But then, the moment they unlock that screen,
It is the Wild West.
it's insane. We hand them a glowing portal that connects them to hardcore pornography, extreme violence, drug markets, and algorithmic psychological warfare. And we say, here you go, honey. Go to your room and close the door.
It sounds absurd when you say it out loud, doesn't it?
It really does. We guard them from a scraped knee at the park, but we leave them completely defenseless against psychological devastation online.
And that, right there, is the great rewiring. We are overprotecting them in the real world, which makes them weak and dependent, and we are underprotecting them in the virtual world, which exposes them to massive harm. We are blocking the experiences they need, face-to-face conflict, boredom, physical risk, and flooding them with experiences they just aren't biologically ready for.
So let's talk about those experiences they are getting. The book breaks down the specific mechanisms of harm. It's not just that the phone is a distraction. The source calls it an experience blocker.
Right. Haidt lists 4 major foundational harms. First is sleep deprivation.
This one feels obvious, but the scale of it in the data is just wild.
It is. The vast majority of teens are chronically sleep deprived today. And it's not just the blue light tricking their circadian rhythms, though that's part of it. It's the anxiety
Because they sleep with the phone right next to them.
or under their pillow. If you sleep with your phone, you are in a perpetual state of hypervigilance. You're waiting for a notification. You're worried about what's happening in the group chat without you.
You never fully power down.
Never. And without deep restorative sleep, the brain literally cannot clear out toxins or process emotional memories. It's a biological disaster for a growing prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so that's sleep. Second is social deprivation, which sounds weird, right? Because they're on social media. But even when kids are physically together, they aren't together.
You see it in restaurants all the time. 4 teenagers sitting at a table together, and all 4 are looking down at their laps.
Just dead silence.
They are physically present, but socially absent. They're hunting for likes from strangers instead of sharing laughter with the person across the table. They're getting emojis instead of actual human eye contact.
And human beings are wired for synchronous connection, aren't we?
Deeply wired for it. I smile, you smile, I speak, you nod. It's a real-time biological dance. The phone breaks that loop entirely.
Which leads right into the third harm, the fragmentation of attention, the cognitive leak.
Yes. If you are getting a physical buzz in your pocket every 3 minutes, or even if you're just expecting one, you can never enter a state of flow.
You can't get lost in a book.
You can't get lost in a hobby or even just daydream. You are permanently stuck in a state of shallow, reactive attention.
And the fourth harm is the addictive loops themselves, the algorithms designed by thousands of engineers to keep you scrolling. But I want to pivot here to something the book goes into quite a bit of detail on, because this rewiring doesn't actually look the exact same for everyone. There is a distinct gender split.
There is. The damage manifests very differently based on how boys and girls tend to interact with the technology.
Let's start with the girls. The data shows the spike in anxiety and depression is actually much steeper for girls. Why is that?
Because girls heavily gravitate toward visual social media. Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. Platforms that are entirely built around performance, appearance, and social standing.
It's the compare and despair trap.
Exactly. Girls, developmentally, are often more socially attuned to begin with. They care deeply about inclusion and exclusion in their peer groups.
And social media just weaponizes that natural instinct.
It does. It creates an environment of constant, unachievable perfectionism. You aren't just comparing yourself to the prettiest girl in your high school anymore.
You're comparing yourself to the prettiest, heavily filtered, professionally airbrushed girl in the entire world.
And the algorithm knows exactly which specific insecurity to target to keep you scrolling.
So for girls, the harm is very active. It's cyberbullying, it's severe body image issues, it's the terror of social exclusion. But what about the boys? Because the stats show they're struggling too, but it looks different.
For boys, the source describes it more as a retreat, a massive withdrawal from the real world. Boys are much less likely to be posting filtered selfies and much more likely to be disappearing into gaming or what he calls online passivity.
So they aren't necessarily anxious about their looks, they're just checking out entirely.
In a way, yes. They are gravitating toward hyper-immersive video games and pornography. Haidt calls this an agency problem. Look, in the real world, it's hard to be a teenage boy.
It's super awkward.
Very awkward. It's terrifying to talk to girls. It takes years to learn a real physical skill, and you might get mocked or rejected.
But in a video game,
In a video game, you are a god. You are powerful. You have a clan that respects you. The rules are clear, and the rewards are instant.
so why go out and struggle and fail in the real world when you can just effortlessly dominate in the virtual one?
Exactly. It provides an artificial substitute for competence. So while the girls are exploding with outward-facing anxiety, the boys are imploding with isolation and a complete lack of motivation. They are failing to launch.
Wow. Man, this is heavy. It feels like we've accidentally built a perfect psychological trap for our own children. But I don't want to leave the listener in the pit of despair here. The book is called The Anxious Generation, but reading it, I found it actually to be a very hopeful book because Haidt fundamentally believes this is reversible.
He does. He is very clear on this point. We can fix this. We just have to collectively decide to do it.
But it's a collective action problem, isn't it? That's the really hard part. I can't just be the one strict parent who says, no smartphone for you if every other kid in the 7th grade has one. My kid just becomes a pariah.
Right. If you are the only one doing it, you are actively punishing your child socially. But if everyone does it, you are freeing them. So the solutions require a societal shift, or at the very least, a coordinated community shift.
Haidt proposes 4 specific actionable norms to roll back the phone-based childhood.
Let's walk through them. Norm number 1.
No smartphones before high school. That means roughly age 14.
Now, to be clear, for the parents listening, that doesn't mean no phone at all, right? Right. Give them a flip phone. Give them a dumb phone. They can call you. They can text you to say soccer practice is over and they need a ride. But no internet, no apps, no high-speed browser in their pocket during middle school.
That seems incredibly reasonable, biologically speaking. Just give the brain a few more years to develop the frontal cortex before you hit it with a dopamine fire hose.
Exactly. Let them mature a bit first. Norm number 2 is no social media until 16.
Okay, this one feels much harder to enforce.
It is much harder. Because even if they get a smartphone at 14, Haidt argues they still shouldn't be allowed on the algorithm platforms until 16.
Because of the vulnerability of that age?
Yes. The mid-teen years, 13, 14, 15, are the absolute peak biological sensitivity for social validation. Dumping a kid into a highly optimized engagement algorithm at that exact age is like tossing a match into a powder keg.
So how do you actually enforce that?
Haidt argues we need actual legislation and robust age verification to make this work, not just a simple checkbox where a kid clicks, I am 13 and gets full access.
That makes sense. Let's talk about the third norm. Phone-free schools. And I feel like this is the one where everyone nods their head in theory, but the execution becomes a total nightmare.
Why do you say that?
Because it's not just the kids fighting the school board on this, it's the parents. I know parents who say, I need to be able to text my child at 10 a.m. in case of an active shooter or a family emergency. We go right back to that safetyism thing.
You've hit on a massive friction point there. That electronic umbilical cord is incredibly hard for modern parents to cut. But Haidt is very firm here. He argues that if the phone is even in the kid's pocket, even if it's completely on silent, it represents a cognitive leak.
It's stealing their brain cycles just by existing in the room.
Exactly. Your brain is constantly running a background process. Did I get a notification? What's happening on the group chat right now? You simply cannot achieve deep focus if part of your brain is guarding the phone.
So the school has to be a sanctuary.
It has to be an absolute oasis of attention. And Haidt argues for locking them away, literally putting them in those magnetic Yondra pouches or in locked lockers for the entire school day. And this forces kids to do something truly radical during lunch break.
Actually talk to each other.
Look at human faces. It forces social friction, which, again, is the gym where social skills are built. If they just stare at screens during recess to avoid awkwardness, that social muscle atrophy just continues. We need to reclaim those 7 hours a day for actual human development.
That brings us to the fourth recommendation, which honestly feels like the most fun one, but maybe the hardest for modern parents to stomach. More independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world.
This is the critical flip side of the coin. You can't just take the phones away and leave them in a vacuum of nothingness. You have to give them a life worth living.
We have to give them their childhood back.
We do. We need to stop hovering. We need to let them walk to the store to buy a soda. We need to let them work out their own arguments on the playground without an adult immediately stepping in to mediate.
We need to trust that they are anti-fragile.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that a scraped knee or a temporarily bruised ego is not a tragedy. It's a necessary lesson.
Haidt uses the term experience blockers for phones.
Yes, phones block experience. We need to become experience enablers.
So those are the 4 solutions. Delay smartphones, restrict social media, phone-free schools, and more free play. It sounds very actionable. But what has the reception been like? I mean, is everyone jumping on board, or are people pushing back on this?
Well, it's a massive bestseller for a reason. It has clearly touched a very raw nerve in the culture. Parents are desperate for a roadmap out of this mess. But to be fair and balanced here, there is valid criticism from the academic community.
What are the skeptics saying?
Some researchers argue that Haidt is oversimplifying highly complex social trends. They say, look, The world is actually scary right now. The economy feels rigged to young people. The climate is warming. There's a lot of instability. Maybe kids are anxious because the world is actually just an anxious place.
They worry that blaming everything on screens is a bit of a cop-out.
Right. They worry that focusing solely on technology might make us miss other deep structural problems in society. Keep in mind, our goal today is just to impartially report on what the source material claims, but that is the counterargument out there.
This is a fair point. It's rarely just one single thing causing a societal shift.
It is fair, but Haidt's counterargument brings us right back to the timing. Those other stressors, climate change, economic inequality, they have existed for decades, or they vary wildly by country. But the smartphone adoption curve is the one single variable that changed everywhere all at once, right in perfect sync with the mental health collapse.
So even if it's not the only cause, it's really hard to argue it's not a massive accelerant.
Precisely. It's
Okay.
the gasoline poured on the fire. And honestly, even if you don't buy 100% of his thesis, the cost of action is incredibly low. What is the downside of giving your kid a play-based childhood? What is the actual downside of keeping algorithmic social media away from a 13-year-old?
Right. Worst case scenario, they're a little bored and they have to read a book or build a fort. Best case scenario, you literally save their mental health.
Exactly. We have accidentally run a massive, uncontrolled experiment on an entire generation of children, and the results are in. They are not good. The way out is to stop drifting and start actively choosing a different path.
You know, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought today. Something that came up while I was digesting all this data, and it goes way beyond just parenting advice. We talk a lot about the mental health crisis, and that is absolutely vital. But there's a deeper question here about the future of our society and really the future of our democracy.
Oh, that's an interesting angle. Go on.
Well, think about it. If childhood is the necessary training ground for independence, if the playground is where you learn to solve problems, negotiate with people you don't even like, and handle extreme discomfort without calling an authority figure to save you, what happens when we skip that training entirely?
That is the terrifying question.
What happens to a democracy when it is eventually led by a generation that was never allowed to explore the world without a digital tether? What happens when the people in charge have never truly been alone to figure a hard problem out? I mean, if you can't handle a dispute over the rules of a kickball game without an adult mediating, how on earth do you handle a complex dispute in the Senate?
You lose the basic capacity for self-governance. If you cannot govern yourself and handle friction, you inevitably invite authoritarianism. You invite someone else to just step in and solve your problems for you.
That is a massive idea to chew on. It's not just about saving our kids' mental health. It might literally be about saving our ability to function as a free, cooperative society.
It really is the ultimate rigorous test for the great rewiring.
Well, on that light note, this has been a heavy deep dive today, but a deeply important one. We highly recommend picking up The Anxious Generation if you want to see the charts and the data for yourself. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Take care, everyone. Seriously, go outside.